Nobody saw the attack. They only heard what came after it. 4 seconds of screaming. Then, absolute silence. 6 people had entered the forest together. Only 5 were still standing. No one wanted to walk toward the trees. No one wanted to walk away either, because somewhere ahead, their friend was either dying or already dead. 16 hours earlier, the trail looked almost disappointingly ordinary. A wide dirt path, clear weather, fresh mountain air. Families had been hiking there all summer. Nothing about it felt dangerous. 2 SUVs rolled into the nearly empty parking area just after sunrise. Backpacks hit the ground. Coffee cups were emptied. Someone stretched. Another complained about carrying too much food. The mood stayed light. They had climbed together before. This was supposed to be one of the easier weekends. By noon, they expected to be heading back down. The first hour passed exactly as planned. Easy conversation. Steady climbing. Laughter echoing between the trees. Until someone suddenly stopped walking. Listen. Everyone stopped. Nothing. That's the point. No birds, no insects, no wind moving through the branches. Just 6 people standing in complete silence. Someone laughed. I've never seen a forest this quiet. Nobody answered, because now everyone had noticed it. They kept moving. Not because the silence felt normal, because nobody wanted to be the first person to admit it didn't. Less than 30 minutes later, they found a broken hiking pole lying beside the trail, snapped clean in half, fresh. One of them picked it up. It can't have been here long. They searched the surrounding trees. No backpack, no footprints, no signs of a struggle, nothing. The pole was left where they found it. The hike continued. But the group never spread out again. Without discussing it, they walked closer together. The forest became darker, the trees thicker, the silence heavier. Then, something large moved beyond the tree line, not fast, not quietly. Branches cracked. One after another. Each step sounded impossibly heavy. Everyone froze. The sound stopped. 20 seconds. No movement. No breathing. No birds returning. One of them whispered, "Bear." Another slowly shook his head. No bear sounds like that. Nobody argued. Nobody had a better explanation. So they kept walking. The overlook was only a few hundred yards ahead. One last climb, a few photos. Lunch, then back to the parking lot. That was the plan. It ended less than 2 minutes later. The trees exploded to their left. Something enormous crossed the trail ahead of them. Nobody saw the entire creature, only pieces. A shoulder, dark hide, 4 massive legs. Then it vanished between the trees. Nobody moved. Nobody even spoke. One hiker broke first. He turned and ran. Stop! Someone grabbed at his backpack, missed. He disappeared behind the trees. 1 second, 2, 3, 4, a scream. Silence. The kind of silence that makes people forget how to breathe. Nobody chased after him. Because deep inside, every one of them already knew they were no longer alone. Nobody spoke for several seconds. The forest remained perfectly still. The screaming had stopped. Only the heavy footsteps continued somewhere beyond the trees. Slow, measured, moving through the pines without any sign of urgency. The group instinctively backed away from the place where their friend had disappeared. One of them finally whispered, "We have to help him." Nobody moved. The words sounded right. Their bodies refused to obey. Another man slowly picked up a fallen branch. "If it's a bear, we make noise." He struck the tree beside him. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound echoed across the hillside. Nothing answered. The footsteps stopped. Every heartbeat seemed louder than the forest itself. Then, another crack. Much closer. Nobody needed another warning. They started moving. Not running. Moving. Fast enough to leave. Slow enough to stay together. No one wanted to become separated. The trail curved downhill through dense trees. Every few seconds, someone looked over a shoulder. Nothing. No movement. No creature. Only the feeling of being followed. Nearly 15 minutes passed before anyone spoke again. "We have to call someone." Phones came out almost together. No signal. Every screen showed the same thing. Searching. Searching. Nothing. Someone tried the satellite emergency beacon clipped to a backpack. The tiny light blinked red. No connection. Another long silence. They kept walking. The trail eventually split in 2. A weathered wooden sign leaned sideways. The arrow pointing back toward the parking area had fallen into the mud. Nobody remembered which direction they had come from. Arguments started immediately. "It's left." "No, we crossed the creek." "That wasn't this trail." The discussion ended when another sound rolled through the trees. Not behind them. Off to their right. Heavy branches snapping. Slow. Closer than before. They chose the left trail without another word. The descent became steeper. Loose rocks rolled beneath their boots. One of the hikers slipped hard enough to twist an ankle. He crashed onto the ground with a shout. Everyone stopped. 2 people rushed to help him. The others watched the trees, waiting, listening. The footsteps returned. Closer. Closer. Then they stopped. No one breathed. The injured man struggled to stand. "I can walk." He couldn't. 2 friends pulled him to his feet and supported him between them. The forest remained silent, almost too silent. Then the creature appeared again, not charging, not roaring. It simply stepped between the trees. For the first time, they saw enough to understand its size. Its shoulders stood nearly level with the lower branches. Dark skin stretched over powerful muscles, scarred by countless old wounds. Its head stayed low as it walked. 4 massive legs carried it with frightening ease across the uneven ground. Nobody moved. The injured man stood less than 20 feet away. The creature looked directly toward him. Seconds passed. Everyone expected it to attack. It didn't. Instead, it continued walking. Straight across the trail, straight between 2 members of the group. Close enough that one of them felt its body brush against a sleeve. No roar, no warning, no interest. It crossed the path, disappeared into the trees, and kept going. The group remained frozen long after it was gone. Finally, someone spoke the question every one of them had been thinking. Why didn't it kill us? Nobody had an answer. But for the first time since entering the forest, they realized something even more terrifying than being hunted. They no longer understood what the creature wanted. The creature disappeared into the trees. No one moved. No one even looked at each other. Every eye remained fixed on the place where it had vanished. Did it ignore us? Nobody answered. The injured hiker finally broke the silence. I don't care what it wanted. I just want to get out. That was something everyone could agree on. They adjusted the injured man's weight between 2 shoulders and continued downhill. The trail seemed familiar, or at least, they wanted to believe it was. The sun had already started dropping behind the mountains. The forest grew darker with every passing minute. Conversation disappeared completely. The only sounds were boots against dirt, and the occasional groan from the injured man. Every snapped twig made someone turn. Every shadow looked wrong. Nearly 40 minutes passed before they found the creek again. One of them smiled. We crossed here earlier. Relief spread through the group. For the first time since the attack, they finally believed they might actually make it back. Then one of them stopped. Wait. The water was flowing in the opposite direction. Everyone stared. Someone laughed nervously. That's impossible. Nobody argued. Because it wasn't just the water. The fallen tree they had climbed over earlier was gone. The broken hiking pole, gone. Nothing looked the same. Someone quietly unfolded the map. Another checked the GPS. The screen refused to load. No signal, no position, just a blank grid. We're lost. Nobody wanted to say the words, but everyone knew. They chose the wider trail. At least it felt like it led downhill. The forest became quieter than ever. Not empty. Listening. The injured hiker suddenly stopped walking. Do you hear that? What? Nothing. Everyone froze. He was right. Not even their own footsteps echoed anymore. The silence almost hurt. Then, the heavy footsteps returned. Slow. Steady. Coming from somewhere ahead. Not behind. Ahead. The group instinctively stepped off the trail. Nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. The creature emerged between the trees. It wasn't running. It wasn't searching. It simply continued walking. Straight toward them. The distance closed. 50 feet. 30. 15. Someone quietly raised a flare gun. Another gripped an axe. Nobody fired. Nobody swung. The creature reached the edge of the trail and kept walking. Straight toward the group. 1 step. 2. 3. Then, it entered the middle of them. Its massive shoulder brushed against one backpack. Its tail slid across another man's leg. The injured hiker stood frozen less than an arm's length away. The creature never looked at him. Never slowed down. Never growled. It walked between all 6 of them. As if they weren't there. No one dared move. No one even blinked. The creature crossed the trail, disappeared into the trees on the other side, and continued walking. Its footsteps slowly faded into the distance. Almost a full minute passed before anyone remembered how to breathe. What was that? No answer came. Then the youngest member of the group slowly turned. I don't think. It's following us. Nobody replied, because nobody wanted to believe what came next. If the creature wasn't following them, then why had 3 people already died? Before anyone could answer. A backpack slipped from someone's shoulder. It hit the ground with a dull thud. Instinctively, one of the hikers stepped forward to pick it up. His boot landed directly in front of the creature's fading path. The forest exploded. The creature turned with impossible speed. One violent impact. A scream. Then silence. The attack lasted less than 2 seconds. By the time the others reacted, their friend was already gone. The creature never looked at anyone else. It simply returned to the exact direction it had been walking and disappeared into the trees once again. Nobody chased after it. Nobody even spoke, because every one of them had just realized the same horrifying possibility. It wasn't attacking people. It was attacking anything that stood in its way. Nobody moved. The forest became silent once again. No one looked toward the place where the creature had disappeared. No one wanted to. The remaining hikers stood frozen around the empty trail. One backpack, 2 fresh drag marks. Nothing else. The youngest member finally broke the silence. It wasn't hunting us. Nobody answered, because every one of them had reached the same conclusion. The injured hiker looked toward the direction where the creature had vanished. "So, we were never the target," another voice answered. "No. We just kept standing where it wanted to go." Nobody liked that explanation, but nobody could argue against it either. Every attack suddenly made sense. The first man had run directly across its path. The second had stepped into it. The third had bent down exactly where the creature had been walking. None of them had been chased. They had simply been in the wrong place. The realization was almost worse than believing they had been hunted, because it meant every death had happened for no reason. They continued downhill, slower now. Whenever someone heard the heavy footsteps, the group immediately stepped away from the trail. Nobody panicked. Nobody shouted. Nobody ran. For the next hour, the creature crossed their path 3 separate times. Every time, they quietly moved aside. Every time, it ignored them completely. The fear never disappeared. If anything, it became worse. Because they were walking only a few feet away from something capable of killing every one of them. Yet none of them understood why it chose not to. As darkness settled over the mountain, the trees finally opened. Someone whispered, "The parking lot." Less than 100 yards away, both SUVs waited exactly where they had been left that morning. Nobody celebrated. Nobody smiled. They simply walked faster. Not running. Never running. The first person reached the vehicles and pulled a key from a pocket. Hands shaking. The unlock button clicked. Nothing. He pressed it again. Still nothing. Dead battery. Impossible. Another member tried the second SUV. Nothing. Then, the heavy footsteps returned. Closer than ever. Everyone turned. The creature emerged from the tree line. Nobody moved. Nobody screamed. The group quietly stepped away from the vehicles, leaving an open path between the forest and the parking area. The creature never even looked at them. It continued forward, straight toward the SUVs. For a brief second, everyone believed it would simply walk between them. Instead, its shoulder slammed into the first vehicle. Metal folded with a deafening crunch. The SUV rolled sideways like an empty soda can. Glass exploded across the pavement. The second vehicle never had a chance. One massive step, another impact. The engine block tore free. The windshield collapsed inward. The roof folded almost flat. Then, without slowing, the creature continued across the parking area, crossed the access road, and disappeared into the darkness beyond. Nobody spoke. The only sound left was coolant dripping onto broken asphalt. One of them slowly walked toward what had once been their vehicle. He picked up the crushed key fob from the ground. It no longer mattered. There was nothing left to unlock. Another looked toward the road leading back to civilization. Nearly 40 miles, on foot, in complete darkness. No food. One injured survivor. 3 dead friends behind them. Nobody cried. They were simply too exhausted. Hours later, the first rescue truck found the 4 survivors walking down the highway just before sunrise. They never agreed on how to describe the creature. Height, weight, color. Every statement was different. Only one sentence appeared in every interview. Exactly the same. It wasn't hunting us. It was only trying to keep moving. The investigators never understood what that meant. Neither did the survivors, because even years later, every one of them still woke up thinking about the same question. If they had never stepped into its path, would all 6 of them have walked back out together,